Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Lost in Thought today. I'm sitting here. I'm watching. Start watching. Well, it's Sunday morning, so sometimes for me to get church services, even though this is actually the church where I got baptized at, but it's just up the road here. I watch their channel. It's for Grandview Baptist Church, and it's got Pastor Lehman on there, Lehman, and seems like a pretty pleasant guy to listen to and all. I watch and listen. But I had already done a vid here a little bit ago, but I decided, I'm going to do this a little different, so it's shorter. And I'm going to show you something kind of cool. It's not just kind of cool. Kind of give you a rough, how do I put it? A rough drawing and example of how connected realistically, life, time, our existence, everything, it's all intertwined. So messing around with it is not always a good thing. When it comes to medicine, modern medicine, I just had breakfast. I had bacon, egg, and cheese omelet. I would have probably thrown some other things in there, but it's what I found for ingredients. I'll be able to use this to kind of explain a couple things, I've had people ask me if I believe in reincarnation, and like I've told them, I don't know. I've never experienced it, at least as far as I know. For me, my experience in life has been a forward walking path, just trying to be myself, really, and just live life. But I had noticed something within my family's ancestry, and I bet if other people did the same thing, they'll notice the same thing. And this kind of shows how intertwined, not just how connected we are to one another, how connected we are to that of time itself, existence, down to the planet, all that stuff. Just a whole multitude of things. See, I had accidentally drawn on this with the Sharpie. So I've got another one that's a smaller one, but if you leave the dry erase on there too long, it gets hard to clean off. And I got another board, but it's much bigger. And yeah. So I'm going to do this. So we know how family trees look, but I'm going to do this in a different method to show you in the aspect of just your mom and dad. So I'm going to go an M and a D. And I noticed, like, with my mom's genealogy and my dad's genealogy, that we're related to not just related to several very important people, but I had noticed our family had been bouncing off of each other. So, like, my mom's genealogy, my dad's genealogy, and when I get done with this, you're going to recognize a few things. So your genealogy, it could look like a straight line if you want, but as I said, as I noticed, my mom and dad's family tree had bounced off of each other, not just a couple times, but several times. Now, when you look at how, you know, it's like two different people at one point, eventually interconnecting, meeting, and then eventually again and again. It's the DNA. It's like a genetic attraction almost. Not literally, but I don't know how else to put it. Well, technically I do. And I bet anything, regardless of family, if you do your genealogy and your family ancestry, you might see similar situations with your mom and dad's family ancestry. You see them bounce off. And see, with time, when you start adding time in the mix, that time apart, each of these lines I'm drawing represents time. But also, each line also represents people in between. That's a cool thing about, there's a fairly good movie out there that has a cool little reference of, 6 degrees of separation, that everybody's like separated to, a certain point. Realistically, I can point out how everybody's connected almost directly in multiple ways. But see, as I start to draw this out, what's it start to look like? It looks like DNA, doesn't it? What happens when you do this and you do this? Guess what? You now have the fish, which not only represents that of Jesus, but also, if you want to have fun with it, a little Darwin aspect, but sorry, Jesus kind of overruns that, and God especially. Through that, yeah, you can, if you wanted, you could draw a straight line. So if we were to add that straight line to each as well, you also have an hourglass. You also have kind of a heartbeat. You also have a flow. Do you see everything going on here? Now, we already know that when it comes to your mom and dad, they have, through your mom, she's, she's going to be half her mom and half her dad, basically, genetically. So, you're going to have that aspect also right next to it on both sides. Whoops. And it's almost like a repeat. It's an interlocking chain. So like a chain link fence. You'll have a similar situation on your dad's side. They'll have part their mom's and part their dad's DNA. See, God works through everything and through everyone to some degree. Some more than others. And in some cases, some, yeah. So when you look at this, and like I said, your mom will have, will be carrying her mother's DNA and her dad's. Your dad will be carrying his father's DNA and his mother's. And you start seeing how interlocked they are. You see that? Pretty cool design, isn't it? See, we tend to pay a lot of attention to, we don't just pay attention to the family tree and all that. We don't take an aspect of how interlocked we actually are. And when you start dividing it, well, what's the use of a chain link fence if the links are not connected, right? And they're sturdy, they're strong, all that, especially when they're connected like that. See, when we pass, our bodies may return to that of the earth, but our souls return to another place. There's an exchange going on, and it's teamwork between the body and the soul, the mind, body, basically the mind, body, and spirit. So, the mind and spirit, in tandem, function on the body. As I said, when it comes to science, they don't understand why humans have basically an internal clock that just suddenly, after so long, they suddenly just start to age and all that. Well, I can show you. It's right there. Like I said, you do this, you have an hourglass. It's almost like a widow built in the blood. And seeing if you undo that, if you start to break this chain, you start to undo it all the way. You tear it apart. And in any life that springs from that, done. And see, the problem with this, though, is, well, it's not a problem. The problem with it dividing like it is, it doesn't guarantee sustainability in any format. See, if you look at, some can sit back and go, oh, we can do this through cloning. No, cloning is not an answer. See, even in cloning, this is why men and women, male and female, rely on each other, and we were created the way we were. Because even when it comes to plants, when it comes to all things, you have to have that genetic material to maintain things, to keep it going. You need that to go on. So yes, even though if you were to take a mother plant and do like what you can do with a lot of different plants, you can clone them. You take a clipping here, take a clipping there, just a little bit, and then clone it. But over time, the genetic material becomes weak, and then it's not as stable as it would be as before. So then, you know what you have to do? You have to restart from seed. Do you see where this is going? Here's another thing. By maintaining the family, what do you have here? You have eternity. Maintaining our existence, human existence, plant, all that, it's all intertwined or interconnected. If you go back, all the way back far enough, all organic matter and so forth, basically all things that exist come from the same base building blocks. It's just rearranged a little differently. That's all it is. Am I a scientist, all this other stuff? No, I'm just I guess you could say in a way at this point in my life, just a fucking nobody loner that probably has too much time on my hands. No, there's more to it than that, but yeah, just right now, that's how I kind of feel about myself a little bit. So, I mean, when I explain this to people, it's like, as I explain this to people, I hope they realize that there is an importance of why we maintain a healthy existence in a way. It's kind of like how I brought up in one vid. I don't know I can't remember if I updated or not. There are laws when it comes to patenting genetic DNA, human DNA, stuff like that. because it's of nature. But when they start creating, I can't say it, and I hope this doesn't get me in trouble, certain things, it can effectively manipulate genetics. Does it do it to everybody? No, no, not necessarily. It depends on from what I have read and understood, and this could be wrong to some level or degree. But even then, when they start to mess with your DNA starts to get altered in any way, it gets to a point where it sort of almost voids that. That's the loophole when it comes to patenting human DNA. Am I trying to tell people how to break a law? No, I'm not. Because that's the problem we're already seeing. It's already going on. So it's like not like I'm telling anybody how it's, how it's done or whatever. It's already being done, because when they're already creating laws for that, that lets you know that somebody was already attempting to patent the human DNA, human genome. There's it's called Myriad, of all things. There's a place out there. It was called Myriad or something like that. It was a company that was trying to patent human DNA, and that's why they had to create laws saying that you can't do that. The downside is when they have to renew those types of laws. No, that needs to be a permanent law. Nobody should be allowed to patent any form of DNA. It might be one thing to maintain and store such things like they have there in, I want to say, Greenland. There's it's like a DNA bank for plants and stuff like that, and I think for some animals too. Stuff like that might be something, of that nature. It's kind of like, in a way, even though some people aren't a fan of some things, I'm not necessarily a fan of it. Having an aspect of a seed bank, I guess the way to say it, a human form of that, I can see the importance of it, because it's maintaining the human species at more or less, if you equivalent it to plants, to that of GMO and heirloom seeds. You're keeping it to as close to its most true form or organic form, and all that, because of, well, when you deal with genetically modified seeds, they're not capable of reproducing necessarily. So you end up growing them, and then you end up having to clone them for a while, and then eventually there's not enough of that genetic material there to keep doing. So sometimes you might have to clone those and then clone the clones. And eventually that stuff's it still loses its strength. So that's the importance of, like, say with humans, that is the importance of why we have male and female. And why they gotta start recognizing that they're both equally important. Men and women each have something to bring to the table. What men can't do, women can. Like childbirth and stuff like that. When it comes to being a kitchen thing, I'm not one of those guys that's like, if I'm with the woman, oh, you got to get your ass in the kitchen. That's where you belong. That's not me. I don't have a problem going in and cooking for my other half in a relationship, or even standing side by side with them and doing dinner and doing food prep and stuff like that. I have no problems, doing things side by side with them. I say them as if like there's a multitude. I'm single, so yet when I have been in relationship, I haven't had a problem working it side by side with them to do different things, whether it's to cook dinner or even do it on my own, clean, even if I do it on my own, or they end up doing something on it. Just whatever it is between the people. It's about teamwork though, and so there's more to it than you think. And now that I just showed that, this design itself also has, when you look at this, it has its relations when you start looking at different indigenous tribes and the designs in their artwork that they have. And it's not just in the U.S. You see it in like places with the Aboriginals there of Australia. You see it with other indigenous tribes within their design. You see that shape, and they're like that snake-like shape, and it's like, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. It's like, it's in your DNA. That shape is there. When it comes to medicine and all that stuff, yes, I see that there's positives to it. I mean, look within the Bible, you had doctors. Even Jesus was healing the sick. I mean, so there's an importance of having these different ones there, emergency responders and stuff like that, whether it be for law enforcement, fire, medical, all. Yeah. But when we start messing with this, when we start messing with this stuff, for the sake of science already did the job for you. Basically, God already did it for you. Don't fuck with it. Because when you start messing with things, you start breaking that down. Humans, we were created equal, but we were also created as being, as a combination of being, not just, we weren't just given dominion over the earth and the things that live on it and in it. We were given a responsibility to take care of our home. And we all have these habits. We all do. This includes myself. We all have these habits. So it's like, okay, how can we do this to where, like, even though I have this crap habit of, let's say the random person who doesn't take the time, just basically either leave their trash in their car and then eventually clean their car out and, say put whatever can be recyclable, and whatever has to be tossed. It'd be preferable that, as much of it, as much of everything can be recycled, so that we don't have to keep reproducing certain, it's like taking, and not putting back into the Earth's natural system. And that's where recycling and reusing comes in, because it helps reduce what we're taking from our environment, so we're not just draining it. It's not a one-way street. There's a give and take in this situation, even at that level, and to all things, realistically. And so people sit back and go, humans are a problem. Humans only became a problem because we keep telling ourselves that. It's kind of like myself in the way of, humans, I'll put it this way. Humans, as a general, seem to have an overall low self-esteem. Humanity has a low self-esteem of itself. Kind of like those like myself who sit back and it's like, I'm a nobody. I don't, I'm just some random individual who really doesn't seem to have shit going for themselves. No matter how hard or how much you put into something, you end up being one of those ones you have nothing to show for anything. And it's for a mix of reasons, that I'll just rather keep out of this. And it's not, it's a mix of reasons. But when you start looking at all of this, it's like we need to realize that we are more than capable of being able to take care of our environment. If we can take care of our environment and take care of all of that, the weather will sort of readjust itself. I'm aware of certain aspects when it comes to the other aspect of, they're the big donation bins. I can't remember what they're called. It's like a tornado. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. It's a funnel bin. And you drop your coin in and it spins around, and as it gets closer and closer to the center, it goes right in. But there's this funny little aspect to it. Because this makes me think of James Bond. So when you see these types of images, depending on how you look at them, and this is just a hand drawn, so it's not as effective as some. Depending on how you look at them and how it's done, it could look like everything's moving inwards or everything's moving outwards. We have to think of ourselves more to be more like that of, like, say, white and red blood cells versus that of, like, a cancer cell. And we have to remember too that sometimes those cells they do get tainted at times. So it's like finding a way to, if we can't cure it, but then to properly treat it without destroying everything else around it or destroying that. You know what I mean? So it's like when it comes to humanity, we have that ability to take care of our environment. We have that ability to not just clean it up and all that stuff. We have the ability to maintain it. We have the ability to restore it. How many, if we specifically relied on, let's say, birds and bees for replanting and cross-pollination, you know how long that would take for a forest to replenish? That's something to think about right there. That's why it's important for having those types of people out there who can get out and go and replant trees and stuff like that. Like recently, like I got to check my email. I had contacted like the forestry place out here to see about getting my hands on some trees to go out and go and replant them in certain areas where we've had in this up here, where we've had forest fires and stuff. And of course, you'd have to get permission, like say like that of BLM, or Weyerhaeuser is another one. And when I talk about BLM, I'm talking about Bureau of Land Management. And even with regular public lands, it's like just, make sure you know where you're going, but make sure you clear it with people like that. But I've got to check my email because I had a thing where I could volunteer time maybe to go out and help with cleaning up some of the parks and stuff and doing restoration stuff, which I'd like to do. Even if it's hard on the body, I'd still like to be able to get out once in a while, even if for a couple hours and not to be able to do something. But having, that's the thing, is people don't give humanity enough credit because of what they see, I guess, in a way with what people see within themselves, and then they kind of in a way project it out onto everything else, in a way of, we kind of feed off that in a way of each other. It's okay that people have bad days and all. It's okay for you're going in public and you're just kind of having a crap moment and all that stuff. That's all totally okay. That's part of being human. But it's recognizing that we are capable of doing more than what we have been. We've spent so much time taking from the earth and all that stuff, so much time from taking from each other, that we haven't really kind of, in any format, given back, even energetically, in some aspects, with different ones. It's like, there's a reason why some people are like, what, I'm done with this situation. I'm going to remove myself. I'm going to replant myself over here where it might be a little more appropriate or more comfortable, whatever, and go from there. It's like, yeah, we also have to remember, if we all sort of just kind of leave a mess behind for someone else to clean up, it won't necessarily get cleaned up. It'll just get buried over, and then somebody else creates another mess, and then it becomes an even bigger mess, a great big mess hill. But that's kind of, I guess, in a way of saying it, like what I just showed you. In order for life to continue, time to continue and all, it kind of falls into that question, We already know bears shit in the woods, whether or not somebody's there or not. We already know that whether somebody's there or not and a tree falls, it's going to make a noise. And all, it's going to happen whether somebody's there to hear it or not. It happens. The part that is truthful, though, is out of any other species on Earth that we know of. I'll just say that we know of. I'll say it that way. we'll just say of the capable species on this planet, we're one of the few that's more than capable of taking care of it and correcting certain things. We're extremely adaptive and all that. You don't, like I said, you don't see bears and deer and coyotes and rabbits and skunks and porcupines and all that going, you know what, we need to get together. We got to go out and go plant some trees so that we can replenish this forest here. You know, this place that is provided as a home for us. You know, that functions as a home, as not just an ecosystem, but a home for them to live, a place where they can get their food, all that stuff. So if we were to actually, you know, take part, do that type of stuff, it's understanding that we can't, you know, go clear cutting a bunch of shit just to put in solar panels. And then go, what about the animals? Okay, well, this means we need to find other methods of alternative energy. It's the same thing with that of fuels. See, the very foods we eat, especially fruits, vegetables, stuff like that, a lot of that also, even the, you know, the stuff that is left over from that is stuff that can be turned into not just obviously compost, which functions as fuel for your plants to grow in the soil and all that, and reconstitutes the soil with vitamins and minerals that's been taken out of it from certain plants that were planted there. But it can also function as a biofuel. So we can literally grow our own fuel. So it's like there's just that alone is almost a closed system. Not literally, but it's pretty damn close to it. So it's like recognizing that we can replenish pretty much everything we take. It's just finding that balance and recognition, knowing that, okay, this is what we got to do. You know, yeah, I see the benefits of humans, you know, when it comes to not just space travel, but also being able to possibly visit other planets, all that stuff, possibly have small colonizations and stuff going on to the point where eventually, yeah, might be planetary, who knows. But it also means that when we go to do so, we have to bring that same mindset of we're not going there to destroy or anything like that. It's to make it livable and to maintain something like that to being livable, you know? That's why it's important to keep like our rainforests going. So like that of there in South America and other places where you have the various jungles like the Congo and all that. Maintaining those rainforests is important. They don't just help produce oxygen that we breathe, it also helps scrub the air. It's like a natural filtration system. You know, we take care of the earth will take care of us. And yeah, it means that the things that we use need to be more or less more biodegradable or recyclable, so that we don't keep taking from the earth to create more shit that we just overall need to just learn to be able to recycle or reuse and all that. That's why, like, when you have situations like the Maytag man, for example, or that vacuum cleaner repair guy, or the TV repair guy, the computer repair guy, all of them, they're important because it helps maintain something. Instead of having something that falls apart, you know, your computers, you're like, oh man, I've had this computer for 6 months or a year and it's already outdated. You know, that's why we upgrade them. That was the great thing about computer parts stores. I love them. You can upgrade your computer to the point where, like, I had one computer that when I put it together, you know, that thing didn't need to technically, other than by software aspect, it didn't need to be upgraded for at least 5 or 6 years. It could still run anything and everything that was being produced. It was just upgrading the software. That was really it. And then over time, yeah, you know, stuff starts, you know, burning out and you got to replace it. But like power supply starts to go out. Okay, well, I got to go up and get another power supply. And having places that can take those old ones and be able to recycle them and refurbish them into functioning power supplies, it works great. That's one thing that I liked about the Fry's electronics store that we used to have. They had a lot of parts there that weren't just, brand new. They had a lot of refurbished parts that were fixed and functioned the same exact way as it was brand new. It just was refurbished to, yeah. It's the same ways when you see some of these places that are actually able to recycle your car batteries and stuff like that. That is a good thing. Because then you're putting less of those back into the environment. And when I was living at my house down in Klamath, and pulling boat batteries and shit like that out of the ground, well, it's no wonder that in some spots of that soil, things weren't necessarily growing. It was just grass that to basically plants that only survive off of realistically the first few inches of soil. And no trees were growing in that spot. They'd grow around it, but they didn't grow in that spot. So it's like, it is important on the recycle, reduce, reuse aspect. That whole message back when we grew up in the 80s, that was important. And then when it went away, I don't, let's worry about the weather. That'll correct itself when we start correcting our habits when it comes to our environment and focus on our environment. This includes learning to realize that water retention is important, meaning dams are important. When I'm seeing signs, when it talks about dealing with beavers in this state, this is Oregon. Beavers are a state animal and they're protected. I'm sorry. I'm one of those folks, if I see somebody pull some shit where that's concerned, no. And they think the beaver dams are damaged. That's not damage. That's water retention. And Mother Nature knows what it's doing far better than you motherfuckers do. And knows better and she knows what she's doing far better than I do. Or the next person does. I don't care how educated you are. Mother Nature knows how to do what Mother Nature does best. And we're not here to manipulate it. We work as a team with it. And when you start fucking with things to a certain degree, you're going to destroy the environment, and then you're going to bitch more about why the weather gets the way it is, because you're destroying the environment. The weather will maintain itself. You look at deserts and places like that. Look at Mars. It deals with pretty hefty storms on it. Why? Because it has nothing to slow the wind down. It just picks it up and starts creating the storms like it does. Just like what you see in a desert. And you watch sand dunes as if like mountains move. Over time they move. So it's like, like I said, water retention is very important. Having those dams in place is important. Even, a beaver dam still allows water to flow through. It's a lot of times they still even allow fish to get through. That water retention helps the soil around it to maintain moisture, which helps maintain foliage, plant life, all that, which helps maintain all the other things like insects and small animals, mammals, that type of stuff, all the way up to deer and bear and cougar and all that. It all plays a part. It's all a part of it. And I can't help but think that there are specific individuals who think by mechanizing and it's going into cybernetics and all that stuff is the answer. You're a fucking idiot. I'm sorry for saying that, yet I'm not at the same time. This is why, even though I see that there's an importance for places like, the NIH, WHO, the CDC, etc., and I've said this before, they're there to help on, might as well say curing existing stuff and studying existing stuff to find those cures. They should not be there to create new things for the excuse of finding a cure, because usually, by majority of the time, by the time anything like that comes about, humans have already formed some form of natural immunity to it. And only a small percentage won't necessarily have that. And it could be for a couple reasons, either being immune deficient or something within their family ancestry might play a part. But even then, we all have a part to play, and it's important. And that's just kind of my thoughts of it, is not just within our human DNA, not just with our family ancestry, not just with, and, you know, say the history of the planet itself, which is beyond, you know, most of us, if not all of us, obviously. It's all intertwined. It all came to be for a reason, and to undo it is probably going to be probably one of the dumbest mistakes that you can make. And messing around with stuff like that it's a big no-no. You're putting too much risk at affecting everything, and I do mean everything. It's not just of one group or one species or even of one place. It affects everything. So I hope y'all have a good one. Thanks for watching, and be safe out there.